You know, as the MCLU, who I've partnered with on some lawsuits, says, freedom, it can't protect itself, you know, and it can't unless people are out there not only fighting to keep our free speech rights, but actually utilizing their free speech rights.
Well,
how many people can they shut up?
Right, could we get you to pledge right now that if Lynne Williams was the governor, the entire state of Maine would be one giant free speech zone?
Yes. Yes.
Excellent.
Yep.
Because nothing to me is worse than a free speech zone. Sure, you can protest this thing you want to speak against, but you have to be way over here.
Oh, yeah.
So that no one can actually hear you.
Yes, yes. And there are some places that are far worse than Maine, I have to say. The spying thing is upsetting to people, but the activists that I represent are typically given, you know, we haven't had the cages yet 3 blocks away where you're sort of put behind sawhorses and temporary fencing and things like that, like they had not only at the last few Republican conventions, perhaps understandably, but certainly at the last few Democratic conventions. You know, the one in Boston was a travesty, and the one in wherever the other one was 4 years before that was just as bad. This Los Angeles. This is what they do.
Right. Amy Goodman of Democracy Now!
Oh, yeah.
I put a video on my website about, I can't even remember if it was Democrat or Republican, rally or whatever she went to, and it was just a horror show.
That was the Republican convention, I believe, in Minneapolis, the last one.
But things like that go on both sides, and it's wrong either way. Let's go back to something you said about the police spyware. South Portland police trying to put on surveillance equipment on their police cars so they could scan your license plate, put it in a database, and basically be able to call you up on their computer and see where you went on any given day. And there's a big movement to resist that. Is that something that you would try to put a stop to as governor?
Yes, definitely. I think it's highly inappropriate.
And to me it's always goes back to the rule, you don't want to let the camel get its nose under the tent, because look what happens, you know. We let the Patriot Act be passed in haste, and now the government can look into our medical records, our computer searches. You know, we let them do the spyware on the cars. They can track us that way. Texas has the tracking devices on the police cars, and now they're putting, the state police want to put drone planes in the air to spy on the citizens. So the state police in Texas will fly over citizens' houses, and you could be fined for speeding, for littering, for shouting at your husband. You might have someone show up at your door accusing you of domestic abuse or whatever. I mean, you have to put things to an end, or that's where you end up.
And I think the people who put forth these proposals don't have a sense of history, because this isn't how you control the population. This is how you spur the population on to fight back against this. In the absence of drugging the population, and so they don't realize what's going on, there's going to be a point where they are going to fight back against this. You know, my young activists that I represent, and some not so young, are out there all the time. They've been doing this for a long time. But I'm seeing now in some of the other issues I'm working on, the industrial wind, for example, there are people who have never been active before, and they now see their communities being turned into plantations for out-of-state wind power companies, and they're really angry, and they've become really motivated to fight back against this. So you can only push people so far.
Right. And you mentioned the idea of prisons being privatized so that there's a profit motive in putting more people in jail to simplify the situation. Yes. And you see that a lot in government. I often think of a quote by Ben Franklin. He said that when people realize that they can vote themselves money, the republic will fall. And you see that all the time now. There's a revolving door where somebody comes in and works for a government regulating agency, and they basically write laws for themselves. Think of 3 examples. Daniel Troy, appointed by the Bush administration to be chief counsel for the FDA, and he writes laws that are harmful to the American public but helpful to the pharmaceutical industry. Mm-hmm. Where is he now? Working in the private pharmaceutical industry, profiting from the regulations that he created. You see President Obama appointing Timothy Geithner former president of the New York Federal Reserve Bank as our Treasury Secretary. People need to really go back over that in their minds until they understand. How can you question whether or not the banks are really running the show when our president puts the Federal Reserve bankers in charge of the Treasury? And the third thing, I just read this morning actually. Judy Gerbinger, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but she's the former head of the CDC, a year ago going around hysterically convincing us that there was a swine flu coming and we need 300 million vaccines for everybody in America. And now where is she? She takes a job at Merck, the largest drug company in the world, in her title, President of Global Vaccine Operations. Ka-ching. Could you pledge that as governor, you would not appoint any special interest hacks to run any commission?
Yes, definitely. I wish we knew more about who, but I know a lot, and perhaps you do too, but I wish the public knew more about people like Kurt Adams, who was the governor's counsel, chief counsel for a period of time, then chair of the Maine PUC. Now he's a top vice president at First Wind, which is the largest wind colonizer in the state. And in terms of the federal appointments, Michael Taylor, are you familiar with Michael Taylor?
No.
Michael Taylor was for many years the Monsanto attorney. He's top of the list to be Obama's food czar.
Not surprising if you pay attention to the Geithner appointment and something like that, although I didn't know it. Does not surprise me, unfortunately. So it happens at every level, the national level, the local level. I think whether you're a Green or a Republican or Democrat or Libertarian, we all need to pay more attention to that. It's completely unacceptable. We need to stop it.